वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः Okay, so we saw there are the contemplation, which is what we call Savikalpa Samadhi. The two types of contemplation, one is Drishya, and the other one is Shabda. Drishya is whatever you see, then that one you see it as without trying to move away from it. Huh? What?
It's a loud thing.
So whatever you see without trying to move away from it or being afraid of it or seeing it as a distraction, just see it as one of the manifestation of the reality. That way it's lovely. You don't need to be opposed to it. You don't need to eliminate anything as such in your life. You just need to manage everything. So this is what we call Drishya Anuveda Samadhi, Vikalpa, Savikalpa Samadhi. The other one is Shabda. Shabda is any word you take from the teaching, whether it refers to the nature of I, or it refers to Ishvara, or it refers to the today Surya did, I think, almost all three. He talked about awareness and he talked about Ishvara, then he also talked about how both Jiva and Ishvara are one. So you can actually take many different parts. You can even take parts from the teaching which refer to values of Bhagavad Gita, any one given value. See what it means to you. Any word, for example, if your orientation is that I need to experience something, you yourself said, what am I expecting? Why is it not the experience? I think it's instead of trying to always, already many of your answers are already answered logically. But it's very difficult to give up orientation. So you have to stay with that orientation and you have to see what is the fault in that orientation. You have to stay with that orientation and see now where am I going wrong. If that were to happen, what would be the case? You have to challenge yourself a little bit. Only when you challenge yourself and when you find your own answers in your own words, then you can say the teaching is assimilated. Otherwise they remain teachers' words.
Beautiful teachers' words.
Huh?
Beautiful teachers' words.
Ah, beautiful teachers' words. Okay, at least I'm happy. Beautiful teachers' words, but then they have to become your beautiful understanding. So therefore, any orientation, any smallness that you feel, or we have the previous orientation, and we all feel it's not like you're, anything exceptional. When things happen, we are disappointed, we feel things are unfair. I mean, that all happens. Life goes on like that. You feel like a victim. So instead of trying to say, oh, now I'm a Vedanti, don't try to fight it, stay with it and try to, correct it. That is all Nididhyasana. That all is a Nididhyasana practice. Keeps coming, bring you back and back to the vision. And as I said, it can happen in both ways. Sadness comes, like Carl was asking, right? It's not like you only have to say, I'm awareness, I'm not sadness. Swamiji used to say, if you systematically do only that, it is called dissociation. Then you use Vedanta to bypass your emotions, and that's not healthy. So he says you can do it, but you first also have to do these cognitive corrections. What are the stories that you are telling yourself because of which you produce this sadness? And there has to be some correction in the stories. Both have to be done. So this is what is required in Savikalpa Samadhi. Shabda, you can take any Shabda. You are free to choose so many different Upanishad Vakyas. Ananda, Ananta, happiness. All these can be what something that you can contemplate on. Then we have something called Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Nirvikalpaka Samadhi is, as I think, it's not like when you sit for meditation, you always have to think about something. So there are people who feel that meditation should be totally thoughtless. So that means every thought is seen as a distraction, as though it takes you away from yourself. Or if you think that, oh, meditation is contemplation, so even if no thought is coming, I actively have to bring something. You don't have to. So as Sahaja was asking in the last class, that sometimes you just want to be quiet, right, without thought. That's lovely too, right? It's not like you constantly have to actively. A lot of the times the mind just wants to just be, and that being, after the teaching has taken place, it could be just being with the teaching, but without any active thoughts. So that is fine too. So that is what we call Nirvikalpaka Samadhi. Okay? So either you have complete blankness, that would be the case if you probably just total thoughtlessness, but that could be just blankness or enjoying the vision of oneself. It can be both without any active thought. So here in terms of Vedanta, it's more like not totally blinding out, but without any active thought, just enjoying your presence. That is a lovely way. It's one of the very nice ways to feel good and nurture yourself. Because we are always, like Swamiji used to say, that the deep inside our psyche is, we are not comfortable with ourselves. And this is why he was saying, you see a person sitting and constantly something. You need to do something. Because you are not just comfortable being with yourself. So even that practice is something very beautiful, that I am fine when I am alone. So that, I think not so much in the Western society, but I think in Eastern societies, people are always looking for company. So company means when you want to go out for a walk, then you always look for a friend who comes with you. So there is always like you can't do anything alone. A lot of people have problem if they are, even in India till today, very few people are able to just go and especially, sit in a restaurant and eat alone. There is a kind of discomfort. It's not like you have to be alone. I'm not saying that. But if you are alone, loving to be with yourself is one of the nice, only when you feel full, when you are nourished, you are fine with yourself. You don't feel lonely. So there is difference between loneliness and being alone. Loneliness means there is a way of thinking. I am alone in this world, nobody is there to take care of me, people are leaving me behind. This is loneliness. Alone is just being by yourself. And this is one of the values in Bhagavad Gita. Okay, Arati Jana Samsadi, that one has the capacity to be with oneself. So this is what we call Nirvikalpa Samadhi. So now, with all these different practices are necessary. So in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, what happens is Drishya and Shabda both disappear, but their meaning remains. Drishya is the objects actively disappear, and what the words also actively disappear. But their meaning remains, and the one actually meaning remains but without any actual thought, and this is what we call Nirvikalpika Samadhi. Okay, and with these practices, what we are trying to do is let the whole teaching take deeper roots in our being. A lot of times when people listen to Vedanta, they say, oh, this is all intellectual understanding. I have to do something in practice. Because it seems that though it's not sufficient. As I told you that when there is praptasya prapti, gain of something which is already gained, there is really no doing as such. Except for all the yoga where you are making an effort to grow. But what you can do is nididhyasana, which is your own effort outside the class to understand what is being said. The more you spend time with the vision of Vedanta and trying to really understand what it is trying to say, and challenge yourself with your own doubts and try to answer your own doubts by bringing in the teaching, the more it will take deeper roots. Otherwise, your orientations will remain after years. People think that something else has to happen. That orientation won't go unless you stay with it and with your own effort, not what teacher is saying in the class. With your own effort, correct it and see its own fallacies. Because already teacher has pointed out the fallacies, but they are not integrated. So therefore, this is something which is very important. Okay. Now, at one point, as a result of this knowledge taking deep roots in you, what happens is the knowledge becomes, they make a distinction. I think a little bit of what Sarthaka was asking in the previous class. Practically, I mean, if you look in terms of reality, the knowledge takes place and it takes place. Ignorance is gone when that takes place. But they make two terms. One is called Brahmavit and the other one is Brahmanishtha. They make slight distinction. So, what is Brahmavit? The one who knows Brahman. And what is Brahmanishtha? Brahmanishtha is when that knowledge has taken deep roots. So that means when you engage in the world, you don't continue to engage as what one little individual. Your whole orientation has changed. Of course, there is an individuality. It's not that it disappears. But that is not the person. That is very clearly, it's constantly, it's always available to you. It's not that you lose sight of that and then you come back to your old way of being. That doesn't happen. That is called Brahmanishtha. So, here he says, Deha abhimane galite vignate paramatmani yatra yatra mano yati tatra tatra samadhaya. Okay? Once there is a certain, there is Brahmanishtha, that it's so crystal clear and it is totally ingrained in your whole being, then what he says is Deha Abhimane Galite. The whole I sense which is in the body is that doesn't make you feel like a small being operating in the world. The I sense will remain, but the thing is, it will not be superimposed with what? Smallness, helplessness, lack. The old story will not keep coming back, and we don't continue to live from the old story. So, that is what we call Deha Abhimane Kalite Vignate Paramatmani. Right? How will this go? Only when Paramatma, which is the real nature of Atma, is totally and clearly known and it takes deep roots. Then what will happen is Yatra Yatra Mano Yati. Wherever the mind goes, Tatra Tatra Samadhaya. Whole life will become an integrated whole. Wherever the mind goes, it's so clear what is what. The ignorance is, look at this, when somebody, a normal person, for that person, as I said, Vyavaharika, which is empirical, is taken as the absolute reality. Sometimes your pratibhasika is also taken as absolute reality. Pratibhasika is your subjective projection, is also looked at the absolute reality. Who is a wise person? The wise person is the one who is not confused between realities. Totally lucid. Right? The wise person understands that everything which is empirically existing depends upon Paramarthika, which is Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Brahma, for its existence. There is no point that knowledge is lost. It's not like, now I have to, So this is what the Paramarthika is totally understood. Vyavaharika, which is Vyavaharika, is also given its right place. It is not disregarded. Mithya means people create a value. Oh, that means it's not important. It's not true. Mithya, the whole transaction of ours is in Mithya Jagat. People say, oh, things are transient. Things are transient, but all your decisions are made in transient world. And you can't just afford to disregard it, oh, it's transient. Dharma and adharma are both part of transient world. So you have no choice but to move to dharma. You can't say it's transient. In that moving world, you have to determine what is dharma and follow it. Right? So therefore, Vyavaharika is clearly understood. Neither more importance nor less importance. Then, when you transact, sometimes your pratibhasika, your own story comes up. You are not objective if you don't recognize my story is coming up. If you can't distinguish between facts and stories. But you are, our teacher used to say, you are objective the minute you recognize this is my story. That means If you are subjective and if you recognize that this is my subjective position, then you are objective. That is objectivity. Because nobody can totally eliminate subjectivity. Totally is not possible. But the minute I can see that I'm now moving on, so as Surya used to say, now you can actually make fun. And he said, oh, this person of mine, now the old child is coming up. Who feels uncared for. And when you detect, and then you can, without being judgmental, you can immediately move back to a proper thinking with your own effort. And you can tell the child, it's okay, this is how you felt, but now you are an adult, you don't need to feel like that. Because now you have different information about the world than what you had as a child. As a child, it was okay to feel like that. But now you have so much more infrastructure, you have so much more information and wisdom and knowledge, and you can shift to another perspective, which is more in keeping with what is. So this is what we call the understanding Pratibhasika as Pratibhasika is the first step. Because until you don't understand it, there is no incentive to change it. You think it's reality, why would you change it? Only when you see that it is not the reality, it is my perception of reality, then you would have incentive to change it. So therefore, the total lucidity between what Paramarthika, Vyavaharika and Pratibhasika is a wise person. If you are all confused, if you try to mix up, if not try to mix up, if there is a mix up, nobody tries to mix up. If there is a mix up, if there is a mix up, then there is still need for growing clarity. I want to talk so that at that point the knowledge is complete. Now there are a lot of people who, there is always this thing about, is knowledge a click? So for people who are listening to Vedanta for 5 years, 6 years or whatever, they always feel that there will be a click. And the Shastra, they do talk about what we call Akhanda Akara Vritti. What it means is that the first time that you listen to Vedanta, your mind is trying to make sense and is producing a picture of what is being said. You get some ideas of what Vedanta is trying to say. But the understanding of everything is not totally clear. So you understand this, but even that you don't totally understand. Then you understand something else, but you also don't quite see the connection between the two. So this is how what the whole Vedanta works. The first time, as I was telling him, that I understood maybe 1/100th of what I understand now. First time that I listened to Swamiji. 100 means such a small part of what I understand now. But could I have said, why would I stick to Vedanta if I didn't? So that means that little understanding also what keeps you going, because there is something which is understood which gives you that wow. That I never thought about it like that. So it keeps you going. Then second time you listen, third time you listen, fourth time you listen. What are you doing? This is what we call growing clarity. Growing clarity means that you're able to understand one given thing more clearly, and you're also able to connect that thing with the other thing, and how they are all connected to make one whole coherent vision. Because each part is so important, you can't afford to miss that part, and within that part you have to see all the chains of logic accurately. So therefore, sometimes I'm saying the same thing. Somebody says, oh, today's class was superb. That is because in their mind, something was made clear. Something took deeper roots, some understanding and some connections became clear. Our teacher used to say that people tell me that Swamiji, you're becoming better and better at teaching. Swamiji said, I'm teaching what I'm teaching. It's your understanding which is becoming clearer and clearer. And therefore it seems to you like the teaching is better and better.
You remember last year we all told you.
So that means there is more clarity, there is more subtlety, the more nuanced you become, better is your ability to understand things. And this is why the teacher has to challenge you a little bit. It's important. Because generally we are so comfortable with what we think we have understood. That is part of the teaching methodology. Some new words are brought in, some new methods are brought in. It will make you think about things that you had not thought about before. That is giving you the infrastructure of learning and clarity. That is very much required. Otherwise, it's the same teaching. So therefore, this kind of, with that method and more exposure, what you do is your understanding of that whole vision becomes clearer and clearer. This is what we call growing clarity. Growing clarity means it's growing in nature. Is it linear growing clarity? No. Sometimes you make quantum shifts. It's not totally. It's like if somebody was saying from one class to the other, I would like to know what more I understood. Once you listen to it for a length of time, you can't really pinpoint because it seems as though you heard the whole thing before. But sometimes very major clicks happen. So this is what we call growing clarity. Then it culminates into what we call akhandakara vritti. That is because what you are actually trying to do is hold in your mind what is said by the Shastra and create meaning for what is being communicated to you. When your mind creates exactly the same meaning as it is intended by Shastra, then the transfer of knowledge is complete. There is no gap, there is no discrepancy between what you understand and what is the intention of Shastra. At every level.
Is there a connection, a direct connection between the clarity of your understanding and vision and the emotional transformation also.
Yeah, very much connected. Absolutely. Absolutely. Emotional maturity is one of the very necessary conditions before this knowledge can take
But
place.
then also the clarity can also
Can-
refine the emotion.
Yes, remote,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's a virtuous cycle. Absolutely. The clarity will enable you to deal with your emotions better if you really understand. So this particular, when that every knowledge is gained through what we call vritti gnana. What is vritti gnanam? So that means now mathematics. You go to the class and the teacher is teaching some formula. How do you understand? Only through what? There is a thought created in your mind, right, which tries to understand what the teacher is saying. And you then, if your thought is in keeping with what the teacher is saying, this is called knowledge. This is why 10 people are sitting in the class of mathematics. The teacher is teaching, it seems as though the teacher is teaching one subject matter. Then when the exams come, the teacher asks some tricky questions. Then you come to know who has understood what. Somebody gets 90, somebody gets 85, somebody gets 80, somebody gets 70. How? Because through asking those questions, the teacher is trying to see what he was trying to communicate, what percentage of what he was trying to communicate you have understood. This is true for everything. Don't make Vedanta into some kind of a extraordinary thing and nothing applies. This is how everything is. There are partial. Can you say that the person who has got 70 has no understanding? Everybody has some understanding, but some understand more than the others. True. And the understanding takes place through your cognitive capacity. And for your cognitive capacity, the way it works is through your thoughts. Your thoughts give meaning. You hear, then you create your own thoughts based on what you hear. And if those thoughts capture the intended meaning, then that is knowledge. That is what we call vritti gnana. Vritti gnana means the thought that arises in the mind when you are trying to understand something has to correspond to what is intended to be communicated. This is called vritti gnana. In knowing everything else, there are two operations. Vritti gnanam will have two operations. One is what we call vritti vyapti and the other is phala vyapti. What is vritti vyapti? Vritti vyapti is, as I told you, that when the teacher speaks, then the corresponding thought occurs in your mind. That is required. And then there is a second operation which is what phala vyapti. The result of that. The result of that is you have every other knowledge is about the object. So there is a corresponding image that has to take place in the mind. So for example, if I show you the flower and you have to know the flower, this rose, what happens? Does this rose physically enter your mind? No.
Well,
So your eyes receive the data.
I can smell it physically.
Yeah, that's true. But the thing is, when you have to see the rose, the physical rose does not enter you. right? Even for you to smell it, the physical rose doesn't have to go inside your nose. So that is,
But
yeah.
the physical thing makes me see it in a different way.
Okay.
But that's different.
Yeah. So it doesn't enter inside. The rose doesn't enter inside. The smell may enter through the air, but the rose doesn't enter inside. So that means that the eyes take the data, they report to the mind, and the mind creates what? Rose thought. And if your eyes are little bit faulty, and if your vision is not clear, even if you create the rose thought, it will not correspond exactly to what the rose is. Right? So that is what we call little bit of error, vagueness. But when your mind creates a thought which is in keeping with what this object is exactly, this is what we call vritti vyapti. With this vritti vyapti, then there is an object which is what? The thought, the object rose that almost shines for you. Right? There is a thought and then there is a corresponding object. What is the object here? The rose. There is a thought and then there is an object, rose, which removes the ignorance of what is here, which is rose. In case of the akhandakara vritti, the operation is not exactly the same. When the teachers say the word, there you have to understand the meaning. The only that means there is vritti vyapti, but there is no phala vyapti. Why there is no phala vyapti? Because is Atma like a rose, an object? Your thought has to take the form of rose. In this case, can the thought take the form of Atma? Because Atma is not an object. So therefore, the knowledge of Atma, the ignorance of Atma completely goes without what? Creating a corresponding form in your mind. This is called akhandakara vritti. For everything else, there are two things. One is vritti, the thought, which then assumes that form, thought form, what you want to know. There is, which then removes the ignorance. Here, in akhandakara vritti, without that corresponding form, because Atma is formless, the ignorance of Atma is removed. This is why it is called akhandakara vritti. If it has taken place, your mind has reached exactly what Shastra is saying. From then on, there is no ignorance. It's totally and clearly understood. There is never going to be a doubt again about what is the nature of Atma. There is never going to be a doubt again about what is the nature of Ishvara. What is the nature of universe, how it's all connected. No doubt. So, this is what we say. From then, that person is called Gnani. Otherwise, it is growing clarity. You can't say the person doesn't know at all. Once the pursuit has started, there is growing clarity. But the culmination of pursuit is when that thought happens. In everything, it is like that. Your pursuit is complete when you have totally understood. The only thing is, in Mithya world, nothing can be 100% understood. So therefore, the research keeps going and you keep on refining more and more. Because the mithya world has no reality. The reality of mithya world lies in Satyam, I. So therefore, no mithya can be, it can only provisionally be known. Then it gets revised. The whole classical physics is what? Based on time and space being absolute. Then the whole Einstein, now it's what? Relative. So that means the whole revision took place.
I didn't get it completely because you said if I see a rose, I have a thought in form of a rose. If I see Atma, Atma doesn't have a form.
Exactly.
So, but I have a thought. Every thought is a form.
Yeah,
So
but
if I think of Atma, and Atma doesn't have a form, but
Yes.
a thought has a form.
Yes, exactly. So that's why it's vritti gnanam. The knowledge cannot, no knowledge can take place without vritti. Anything now that you are understanding, you are creating your own thoughts to understand what I am saying. There is no knowledge which takes place without thoughts. That is what we call cognitive capacity. Cognitive capacity essentially requires thoughts. So that means every thought is used to know something else. There is one thought which leads to discovery of nature of I. That thought which gives rise to the nature of I is also vritti. It goes away after doing its job. What is the job it has to do? It has to remove ignorance. It removes ignorance and it goes away. The thought doesn't stay. Akhandakara vritti doesn't stay with you. It is not like the constant limitless vritti or anything. It takes place, it does its job, the ignorance is removed, and then you know the nature of Atma. And that same mind continues to think about other things.
Because the vritti cannot be limitless.
Exactly. Vritti cannot be limitless, but the nature of Atma is completely understood. This, as I said, the whole picture is kind of, it's not one vritti, it's like hundreds of hours of teaching which is creating the vision. When one vritti gives rise to the knowledge of Atma, which is exactly what it is. Not, if vritti is never limitless. Vritti is born at a given point in time. It cannot be limitless. And the vritti, after doing its job, is going to go. You want to understand a small thing, you need one vritti. If you want to understand a very big thing, you also need one vritti. The vritti is capable of understanding things. That is what we call cognitive capacity. Through vritti, you can remove ignorance. Every knowledge is like that. Whenever you are learning something, your mind has to understand what is this understanding? It creates thoughts which are corresponding to realities. This is called knowledge.
But the vritti jnanam, that only removes a piece of ignorance at a time.
Exactly.
Until the complete vision takes root.
Absolutely. Because that's why it's not just one time you're sitting and meditating and then the whole knowledge is going to take place. As I said, it's hours of understanding of Vedanta. Each vritti, first time you heard one thing, what happens? It tries to create a picture. Then you hear fifth time Vedanta, then what happens? You have many, it's a culmination of many vrittis.
Like a puzzle.
Like a puzzle, exactly. It is like jigsaw puzzle. Every time you hear, you put one part. Absolutely. Right? It's not like one vritti not related to any other vritti. This is why we say growing clarity. So that means with each vritti what you are doing, you are putting some part of the puzzle, other part of the puzzle, this part of the puzzle, that part of the puzzle. Over a period of time, some coherent picture begins to emerge. When you put the last piece together, the puzzle is solved.
And you call that anakara?
Akhanda akara vritti.
Can you explain the Sanskrit for that? Is it akhanda? Is that partless?
It's partless.
And what's
Akara means there is formless.
Is that the same kara like ahankara? Is that kara? Is that
No.
the same roots?
No,
No.
akhanda akara. Akara
But
here is in form of form. So there is every vritti has a corresponding form.
But akara, is that kara like ahankara?
No,
No.
no,
It's
no,
not the same.
no,
No.
no, 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 no.
Kara, ahankara is a notion. I notion.
Yeah, that I know.
This is-
Here's
So
akara is in terms of
So
form.
it's partless.
So that
formless.
vritti has, because that vritti is one vritti as opposed to every other vritti, one thought as opposed to every other thought.
Yeah.
That thought does the job of removing ignorance,
Yeah.
but not in every other removal of ignorance, right? There is a corresponding form of
Yeah.
whatever you want to understand.
So it's a thought of partlessness and formlessness. Is that what it means?
It means that that thought does its job of removing ignorance of nature of Atma without creating an image of Atma.
Akara, so okay, yeah, without creating a form, without
Yeah,
creating a
without
form.
creating. Because Atma is one thing which is formless.
Of course.
And these last sentence are like the Mahavakyas?
Now, all the sentences that I am telling are Mahavakyas. Mahavakyas means they reveal the truth.
Tattvamasi.
Tattvamasi, these are all Mahavakyas.
Yeah.
The thought has a form, but the thought is one given thing, but it has to serve the function. Otherwise, when is knowledge? There is no knowledge without corresponding thought. You have to understand that.
Then it's more like drilling through a wall. So then there's a hole and then you see Atma shining through.
No, I think this, I don't know. I don't want to comment. But as Matt said, it's not just one vritti, please understand. This last vritti is what? Putting the last piece of puzzle together. If you're not closer to the, you have had how many different vrittis to understand vision of Vedanta? Is it just one vritti? No. If you have studied Vedanta for 10 years, how many different thoughts you use to understand Vedanta? There is no knowledge without thoughts, you have to understand that. Every knowledge is vritti gnanam. This is why you need to prepare the mind, because the knowledge has to take place in the mind. Knowledge can't take place in the hand, in eyes, it has to take place in the mind. Every other knowledge is about the object. This knowledge is about the nature of the subject. The nature of the subject is not a form, it's self-revealing Atma. When the self-revealing Atma is indicated by Shastra, your mind is able to capture clearly, and after revealing the nature of Atma, vritti also goes. Like every vritti, it goes. Your thoughts have reached the reality. But the thoughts are mithya. But you need mithya. Otherwise what? You need mithya. That's why human body is a very important birth. Because in this human body, you are given a mind which can figure out and no mind can figure out. The whole process with which a mind figures out is through creating thoughts. There is no other way. Thoughts can be about the object, the knowledge can be about object, or it can be about nature of mind. The thought does its job of removing ignorance, but not producing an image. In everything else there is an image.
That's the only thought that doesn't have an image.
That's the only thought. That's why it is called akhandakara vritti. Exactly.
How do people get to understand this? Like, just amazing. Like, of all the possible thoughts, that's the only thought.
Yeah, this is
how the rishis
see
understood.
the rishis could, because see how it's amazing how they have analyzed that the only way you understand this rose is by creating an image of rose in your mind. That's how it is. Because the physical rose does not enter your mind. And if your image is not proper, then you have not understood. This is called partial knowledge, erroneous knowledge. It has to correspond to reality. This is why we make a distinction between what is the distinction between karma and jnanam. All this you need to understand and think about before the knowledge begins to take its root. It's not easy. Vedanta Shastra is not easy. You think, I just want to get it. It's not easy. Your mind has to go through some training.
What about a blind person? Would they still have an image in their mind? Because if they've never seen a rose, they don't know what the form of a rose is.
Yeah. So, but they use, let's say, the hearing center. I don't know what images. I have no idea how the blind people learn things. Maybe they touch, they use other sense. They use the sense of touch, and they try to
there is a map
create.
secret.
They will try to
See the
create.
bats, they are also blind.
Persona, yeah.
And so through all the different signals, which is sent and that come back to them, they draw a map. So it's not a visual map, but it is a sonar map.
Yeah.
And this is how they are able to come to some knowledge.
It's still an image.
Yeah.
It's still an image. And it's cool because there cannot be any other way. The thought comes, it does its job, which is what putting the last point in its place. So this is why if people say the last part of the puzzle in its place, then the whole thing is clear. Then the thought itself goes. And the thought is not like then that you have to keep on thinking about it actively. Once you have understood any given formula, E is equal to mc square, does it depend upon you actively thinking all the time? No. It's available to you. Whenever you want to bring it, it is there for you. It's clearly understood. So, this is what we call akhandakara vritti. When that takes place, what happens is vidyate hridaya granthihi chidhyate sarva samshayaha kshiyante chasya karmani tasmin drishte paravare. Tasmin drishte paravare. That when that Brahman, which is what seen means, doesn't mean it's seen as an object, right? Which is what both the cause and the manifest creation, the cause and the effect, which is what the manifest creation, is clearly known by the person. It says hridaya granthihi chidyate. very interesting expression is used because the entanglement of the heart,
The knots.
the knots of the heart. The knots of the heart. It's not said the brain. The knowledge is vritti gnanam, it is taking place in the mind. But the word which is used is what? The knots, the entanglement, the knots of the heart are all. What is this? This is what we say, the seat of ahankara. Even though the entire thinking faculty is here, we say, I am. His heart is very big. Are you speaking from your heart or just the mind? So that means that this heart is not a literal pumping heart that we are talking about. We are talking about, right, that anything that very personal to you, you can say it's very close to my heart. These are all expressions to show intimacy. Intimately known, not as, it can, in fact, Atma can never be what? An indirect knowledge. If you are trying to understand Atma as something which is out there, you don't know what you're doing.
That could only be an object.
Exactly. The indirect knowledge can only be of objects. If I tell you, have you tasted durian? And if you haven't tasted durian, then I can give you some knowledge of durian. And I can say it's a little bit like jackfruit, but it's more creamy, it has horrible smell. So that is what we call, what is she trying to do when I give her this description? She's creating a vritti. She's creating a thought. Trying to, what? Oh, the size of a jackfruit. So that means she creates a thought. Then I say it's sweeter, a little creamier than jackfruit. Then she will create an image of, yeah, okay, jackfruit has this creaminess, then this much more. Then it has more smell. Thoughts, these are all thoughts, and through those thoughts, images, her mind is trying to reach what my description is saying. But it will give her indirect knowledge. Why will it give her indirect knowledge? Because durian is what? Not there in front of her right now. So next time she goes to Singapore or Thailand or whatever, she sees a fruit which is like jackfruit and it smells, then she'll say what? Oh, it is durian. That indirect knowledge which she had now became direct when she saw it. In case of Atma, when is Atma away from you? Never. So it can never be indirect knowledge. It can never be. It's not like you first have to know Brahman as some entity and that is a theoretical thing, and then what? You have to know it as yourself. You can't know Brahman unless the only place that Brahman is available to you is in your buddhi as self-evident life. Because it's not an object, it's not available to you anywhere else. To be objectified. The only place it is available is in your buddhi as the truth of I. And the thought, when it understands the truth of its own, then it just goes. It is not producing anything new. If the thought had to produce limitlessness, it's impossible. Limitlessness is always there as a truth of every thought. Not one thought, every thought.
But the thought and the mind always include some feelings also, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
This
Absolutely.
smell and this
Yeah,
creaminess
everything.
and so on. That,
Absolutely. So it also creates some feelings. Those feelings are also thoughts.
yeah, but it's not just the pure.
No,
Yeah,
that's why
brain.
we divided the functions of the mind in 4 categories:
Okay.
emotions, cognitive capacity, memory, and eye sense. If the thought had to produce awareness, it cannot.
This is the mistake people do in their mind when they think I have to become like Jesus, or because it has to be your own thought, your own erkenntnis, wisdom, or how to say, yeah. Because they try to make an image where they can follow another thought, from someone else.
Yeah, exactly. So we are not trying to follow someone else, we are trying to understand the nature of I. That's true. That's true. So that means Hridaya Granthi is oh God.
Okay,
So that
sorry.
means that's true. No, but it's true, Yuta. What you are saying is right. We are not trying to. It's true that I think what she's saying is so true. That your generally what happens in the process of learning, your commitment becomes to the teacher, to the text.
And you want to copy.
And then you want to copy, you want to emulate that person, you need to, So many foreigners, when they come to India to learn Vedanta especially, they all kind of think that learning of Vedanta goes with wearing saris and, then putting tika like South Indians and, and in some ways if you appreciate that, it's okay, But it's not like you have to be like that to get knowledge.
It's like that thing, if the glasses are on your head, you're just looking everywhere else around, like you say, looking at another object, so you've missed.
But this is the
what's
first.
in you.
I'm sorry. Our first learning is like this. We are trying to do the
Emulate.
same like mom and dad.
Yes,
no?
yes,
And
exactly. This is why that's so true. In some ways we emulate the teacher, right? It's true. And we take on so much like how we take on from our parents. But what we always have to understand is, because as an adult when you go to a teacher, that you are interested in the teaching and the teacher becomes important to you because can give the teaching. If your commitment becomes to the teacher, then you become blind. Then you just accept whatever the teacher says, and then if somebody tells you the reality, you are not available for it because your whole commitment has shifted from teaching to the teacher. So that's why one has to be careful.
yeah, this is also really to have to understand, no?
Yeah.
So because it's so deeply
Yes,
in us
yes,
that
yes.
we are looking to become like you, or yeah, if
I didn't know that. Good, thank you, Yuta. I'm so happy. You're inflating my sense of well-being. That's good. Tell me
Next year.
it's
what. Next year.
it's only that I try to understand it
That's
by
true.
practice, no? By
Yeah, and it's true.
like to
What you're
earth,
saying
what
is,
does this mean, no?
what Yuta is saying is so right, and we all do it unconsciously, So I keep telling that sometimes we ask for people's feedback, right, after the retreat. And generally people should give the feedback about what we are saying in the class, in meditation, in classes and all. You won't believe 50% of the feedback that we get is about what people see how we are.
Yeah.
It's like you're kind. Now, how by coming to my class, you know whether I'm kind or not. Exactly. So that means the human mind is capable of seeing so much more. I give myself away unintentionally. And you also pick up how I am, right, through my non-verbal communication.
And for us, it's wonderful to see. This is the other aspect.
Then
How is possible
Possible.
to
To become that person. That
not only
person
become that
becomes
person, how this person is engaging in the world.
engaging in
This is the most
Exactly.
interesting thing.
Yes.
It's always the question. No.
Yes.
Arjuna is
True, true,
also
true.
asking,
True.
how is
True.
behaving a wise
True.
man?
Absolutely.
Always.
Always.
How to
Absolutely.
understand it.
That's true.
How does
Most
she
interesting.
walk?
How
does she look?
Ask Gudrun, she'll tell you thousands of
Yeah, but the newest, I think that the neuralists or the little doctors know that when you learn for the teacher, not for life, you know? That's the new idea. When we were young, our parents told us you learn for your life, not for the teacher. But it's just the other way around. The minute you learn, you do it for the person who tells you. You want to be in contact. And so that's probably why.
That's lovely. See, that's a lovely thing, you know, it's lovely to have that contact because only you learn when you have that affinity with the teacher. No matter how good the teacher is, if there is you don't resonate with
But
that person.
It's not no matter how good the teacher is, you're offering this contact, and that's probably the thing that people, see.
But the motivation might be very great when you have this invitation from the teacher and you appreciate him and you want to show your knowledge.
See, the
only
only
the English word for that, mirror neurons. I don't know.
Ah, mirror neurons.
That?
Yes.
Well, that's the thing.
I totally agree with that. The only flip side of this thing is, imagine you have a teacher who's very charismatic, especially in spiritual world. And is very charismatic, looks beautiful and says nice things and gives you all wrong messages.
And I experienced it. We had to give a commitment to this teacher. That was like the beginning of the training. And I think this is just, and this happens. I mean, this is. If I hear you now saying that when you give a commitment to a teacher, you really give yourself away and make yourself blind, that makes total sense to me.
Yeah. See, unfortunately, and especially in spiritual world, it's so true. Right? People go just by their feelings, their intuitions and things like that. And once they have that commitment to the teacher, then what happens is, even if that messages are wrong, so many times it happened, you won't believe it. That when Swamiji, they came to Swamiji and they had listened to some other teacher or whatever, when Swamiji would contradict what they said, they couldn't handle it.
Like Pythagoras.
Sorry?
Like what Tristan told that as a student said something differently around.
Yeah, Pythagoras, huh?
Achso.
Yeah, exactly. So that means sometimes it becomes very, that's how we operate. And it's good to have that, because it's good to have affinity. But that's why that intelligence and lucidity and all is so important. You can be grateful to whoever that you have learned from. But if your commitment is to the truth, then you are also able to move on. That is very important. You have to make that step. Otherwise you get stuck because you are emotionally connected.
And now we are back to the point.
Yes. So now, Hridaya Granthihi is Chidyate, right? So all the entanglements, these kind of things are all very, the suffering goes away. Challenge is, like anybody, it remains, suffering goes away. Okay? Hridaya Granthihi Chidyate, Savra Samshayaha Kshiyan. Okay? All the doubts, whether a neuroscientist is standing in front of you, or a quantum physicist is standing in front of you, or a cognitive behavioral psychologist is standing in front of you, mathematician is standing in front of you, you don't say, oh my God, now Why? Will I be able to answer the question? Well, you don't get stuck. Somebody else's doubt doesn't become your doubt. Oh yeah, that's true. I didn't think about that. Sarva samshayaha. Crystal clear knowledge. Okay? So that happens. Then, at that point, then kshiyante cha asya karmani. Okay? What happens is all the karmas are all gone. As we had seen before, the samchita karma, all the karmas from all the past accounts, they are all gone. Then agami karma, what you have collected in this life, they are all gone. The only karma which remain are prarabdha karmas. The prarabdha karmas, as I said, they are meant to enable you to live with the vision of oneness or fullness for a while. Lifetimes have gone, you living with your understanding of yourself being a tiny little dot in the universe. You are given few years to enjoy the fullness. And along with that, you also become contributor. Because the whole ignorance, they are the instruments through which the ignorance is removed. They become the link, Guru Shishya Parampara. Guru is the teacher, Shishya is the student. What is the difference between a real teaching? A real teaching will make you empowered so you yourself can become a guru. The student becomes a guru. In any spiritual pursuit where the guru always remains guru and you always remain shishya, is no tradition. There is no change. There is no role shift in role. This is a lovely tradition. It's empowering. It is making you the whole. That if it is transferred to you totally, you can then transfer it to other people. That's why we don't have this thing that one person has to bear the responsibility of imparting knowledge to everyone. So that's why I have to keep coming back. Even though I'm wise, my karmas are gone, I still have the responsibility to take care of ignorant people. That doesn't exist. Because in your lifetime, when you have transferred this knowledge, the job of carrying forward the knowledge is not yours anymore. That other person will take over. Knowledge has no ownership. The source of every knowledge is Ishvara. Sarvajnaha Sarvashaktiman Ishvara. Show me one knowledge where human beings can take ownership. Quantum physics knowledge. Wow, you think scientists were so clever. But the universe was already organized. This was already depending on atoms. Somebody's knowledge made those atoms as wood. Not your knowledge. You only removed the ignorance. Human beings do not create knowledge, we only remove ignorance. Any field, not only Vedanta. When you do research for years and years and years, astronomy, the whole solar system and all the planets and everything is already there, already arranged. You are only removing your ignorance. human beings don't own knowledge. There is only one entity where knowledge rests, and that is Sarvajnaha Ishvara. This is why in Indian classical music, we don't have, you say, who created that raga? Raga Bhairavi, Yaman. Who created? There is no name. There is no name because there is no ownership. Sound harmonies exist in the universe. And this is what he was saying. He was saying when he was hammering, there was what? There was harmony. We human beings collapse, we sense that harmony and we create music. But the harmony is there as part of the design. So whether it is music or even dance, Bharatnatyam, who did it, who is the origin? We don't have names. And the rishis, the name rishi are what? They are seers, seers of what is. They are not the creators of knowledge. The very name indicates that. They saw the reality. Saw means they understood. Which was, and what is the ultimate source? Dakshinamurti. The Lord. Lord Shiva in form of the teacher. So therefore, every knowledge is from Ishvara alone, including Vedanta. And Ishvara as Sarvajna Sarvashaktiman figures out who is the link at what given point in time. You don't need to shoulder it on you. If you have understood, you just pass it on. And then somebody will get it totally and will again pass it on. Even if somebody hasn't got totally, the person will still have enough to give to somebody else. And who goes to whom? Who arranges? Ishvara. 2 years ago or 3 years ago, you didn't know I existed. And neither I knew you existed. I didn't come saying I want to teach Sahajo and Guru, and I didn't even know. I have no ownership. We both are here because there is a design of Ishvara there. Who gets what teacher also then depends upon which level you are at. And anybody's teaching, when it resonates with you, it shows, it establishes the level. That this is where you are, that is what is going to resonate with you. So therefore, this whole thing is taking place within Ishvara's arrangement. So that means karmas are gone, they are gone. You don't need to come back and experience the world to save the world and give the teaching. It's taken care of. This is the trust in Ishvara's order. Gnani is expression of the Ishvara speaks through Gnani. Because the Gnani doesn't have one's own opinion which conflict with what the reality is. This is why Lord Krishna says, Gnani and me are the same. Because we both know the same reality. So therefore, this person's karmas are gone when the person sees this Brahman clearly. Okay, so now the next verse. Now we have how many verses left? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, 6 I can easily handle tomorrow. 3 in the first class, 3 in the next class. The camp will end tomorrow at lunchtime? Yeah, okay. So the last 6 verses I will do. Feedback. That's true. Feedback, can we do little bit this evening or not?
Yeah.
How much is your entire 1 hour?
40 minutes.
40 minutes. So the first 20 minutes, you want to first do it or
No.
after? So first, but 20 minutes would be enough. So
For feedback?
yeah, no,
Good.
yeah. You don't have many things to say.
Enough said.
We already said last
Yes,
year.
and now.
But it has to be a revised feedback. Okay, so we'll try to do a little bit of feedback this evening, and then tomorrow also, if I can finish a little bit earlier, then we can do the last class and little bit more feedback. Yeah. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.